Good evening, everybody. Wow, looking at those pictures, I'm like trying to not tear up because I never thought I would have had that life. So my name's Xavier, and I'm a child of God and a believer who's recovered and struggles with drug addiction and alcoholism and more. Sorry, that got me caught up. Gather myself. All right. So a little bit about me. Listen, I was born in Puerto Rico. I moved here when I was about 5 years old, and I had a normal childhood. Great parents. Parents are still married. Everything was good, and my experience, I played sports. I did everything that normal kids do, and I guess I moved from a different country, and it didn't really hit me till about middle school, and that's kind of like when those first feelings that I went to a very affluent school. It was a new school, but they also placed it near Moon Lake. If you're familiar with Florida, that's where the KKK was, Nazis. So I grew up with a lot of extreme racism when I hit middle school. So that's kind of when the first feelings or emotions that came and I never felt any different, but others. I went to school, a lot of kids from elementary school, like everything was, but there was a lot of issues, and those were the first feelings. I kind of started doing some things. I had a cousin who moved down from Cleveland. He was older. My parents were let us hang out with him. I was 13, 14, out till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And now it's kind of like my first dabble with any kind of substances, just smoking weed and things like that. And yeah, it was just, that was kind of what it was. Middle school was a little rocky because I fell into those things, because feeling like not belonging, that's my crowd now. Within middle school, I missed like 2 months of middle school, like doing LSD, doing things like that. No, normal stuff, not so normal. But one pivotal moment that kind of set the train rolling was I was very close with my grandfather. He's the reason we moved here. He's in World War II from 39 to 45. He was in Korea. He was like my hero. Well, 3 weeks before high school, he passed away. And we have these moments when we're young that we don't realize till we're older. But the behaviors was there. I was doing a gram of cocaine in my grandma's house before, getting on the bus. And my grandparents were very religious. It felt like a church in their house. You didn't want to do anything. It just felt wrong to even do anything in their house. Through high school, a little bit of the same. I kind of put the hard drugs down because I was like, this is too good. Maybe I'll see you again another time. Those first 2 years of school weren't very good, but I had an older brother who graduated, kind of motivated me. I was like, okay, I want to graduate. I did well. I went to college in a small school in West Virginia. Same environment that middle school was. I was deep in West Virginia, a lot of the same cultural aspects. There was maybe 13 of us from different countries. And it was a little rough. September 11th had happened, and I had issues with school security. They accused me of being a terrorist and all these things. And yeah, so that's kind of what college is normal. But I seen that my drinking and my behaviors were there. I played football, games were over, I wouldn't even shower. I'd just go to a parking lot, start drinking. It was just, we're only allowed to drink 1 day a week, so I was like, I'll take advantage from the time there were football games over. So that was kind of how a lot of things. When I came home, that was when, and mind you, this has been my life. I also sold drugs, it's all I knew. And sometimes I pose this question, was it because of all the substances and things I was doing that I felt so alone? and everything, and that like people didn't like me and stuff in school because I was pretty popular. Like, what came first? Did they not like me first, or was it because I was using and they were good kids, so they stayed away? But those feelings and emotions were there. And when I came back, that was kind of when things really got out of control for me. I was probably drinking alcoholically, but that's what you do. Come back from school, you party a little bit. Shortly after that, I discovered opiates, and that was kind of what my story was for 20 years until I found recovery. It wasn't like the last 10 years were probably the most challenging. As things got worse, I was getting my medication from the doctors, they started cutting my medication, and that's kind of when I discovered how unmanageable my illness was and how kind of spiritually bankrupt I was. And that's kind of just what I did for a while. And during that time, I didn't have any type of spiritual foundation. Like I said, my grandparents actually were very involved in church as kids. Like, we would prepare food all week so they could sell on Sundays to make money for the church. I grew up in a very religious family. Like, and think of it, not thinking now, like the example that my grandparents set. Like, everybody in my family is all about God now. There's no more family parties of drinking and all that stuff. So I kind of see like the example that my grandparents set. I'd see my grandparents pray for like hours every night, every morning. And I never couldn't, I didn't have a relationship. I didn't understand it to the point where I majored in chemistry when I first went to school. Because I was like, there's always this deep yearning to seek. Like, and that was kind of like my way to understand, because I could, it in a way gave me an answer until it didn't. It broke things down to atoms and molecules and subatomic particles. Like, I was yearning to find answers, but I just didn't know how. I was trying to explain a God that I could never explain, right? And yeah, so during those troubles, like, during that time, like, there were times where I swear, like, it was the hand of God protecting me. There was something, I couldn't place it, but so many times I should have died. So many times, and I felt protected. And I just remember thinking back, like, at one point, like, I've saved you so many times, but now you have to learn some lessons. And that's kind of what happened, right? We can only go against God's will for so long before we start learning some lessons. And during my user, I didn't care about anybody. I didn't care about you, me, anything. I hated you, I hated me. I blamed God for what was going on. And it was, no, now they're like everything was my fault. So there are a few low points along the way, like what really brought me into my recovery, right? Was the moment that I tried getting sober in Daytona, and during this time, stepped into AA, and they're like, you have to pray, you have to, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And I didn't even grow up Catholic, but there was a Catholic basilica, and I looked at it, I'm like, it's a house of God. I still kind of hold that view. Regardless of denomination, it's God's in there. So I would go there praying and seeking. But I came home, and the girl who was my neighbor, like my best friend, it was Thanksgiving 2019, and we both actually used that Saturday. And she overdosed and lived. But then when I left to go back to Daytona that Tuesday, she overdosed and died. And that took me, like, mind you, I had, since I was 13 years to this time, consistent drug use. It never got as bad as it did those 6 months. was in 7 institutions. Like, just, I remember going, like, using so much, hoping I didn't wake up, and waking up crying because I had to live another day. Like, it was just so bad. And then the second event was, before I came to rehab the last time, was I overdosed a couple houses down from my parents' house. And like the thought that if my neighbor would have had to tell my mom that I died like that was kind of the one that really leveled me. I just couldn't, like my mom didn't deserve that. She didn't deserve all this stuff. There's a lot of stuff that happened in between, but that's kind of what happened. Those 2 moments sent me in. So it's been a struggle since then, you know. It was, my last treatment was here, like I said, it was 2020. I got shipped to Fort Myers. It wasn't a lot back in Tampa. But, and I was miserable. I didn't want to be here. I didn't even know if I want recovery. I know I didn't want to feel pain anymore. I didn't know how to get sober. Where I come from, people don't get sober. You die or go to prison. Those are your two options. I knew like one person that went to prison. Actually, he's sober because he went to prison. He's been sober 16 years. But that's the kind of environment I grew up in. And I couldn't go home. And I remember being at the Sober Living at White Sands and thinking to myself, like, what's the worst that can happen? I'll try your steps. You know, I even told Patty that shortly before she kicked me out. And that's kind of how my relationship getting back into church and everything, I'll explain that. But the biggest thing is I knew this stuff worked. I seen it work in people all the time. I was in Daytona. I seen homeless guys come off the street, start $1 million businesses doing tree work. I seen it work. I just wasn't willing to accept it. And, you know, I came down here. I ended up going to Surrender House. Eileen pulled me in there, and that was my introduction to, that's how I started going to church, because she counted it as a meeting. I'm not going to lie to you. That's what happened. But I was hearing things that really resonated with me. I liked the message. And I didn't really come in with resentment towards God. I knew that I found my place because of the things that I did. I just felt that kind of I did too much and I didn't have any grace. And and I did everything you're not supposed to do in recovery. 30 days, I got with a woman. 3 weeks later, she was pregnant. Shortly after that, at 5 months, she gave birth to that child. The child passed away. And but I had some peace. I had some peace because I worked this a little bit. And then things were happening. But I also didn't continue to do it. And my son, he's around here somewhere, she got pregnant with him. Things weren't good. I was in untreated alcoholism. She was postpartum and pregnant again. And just face it, like I was nowhere healed to even be in a relationship, right? And we split up at 6 months pregnant, and I remember, like I would always just pray and pray and pray, like just, it's, looking back, that long suffering is a beautiful experience because in the biggest pain of my life, that's where I found my faith. I remember those days. I remember praying and praying. I went to church actually, and our youth pastor was leaving, and he was teaching on Elijah at the altar. Mind you, I'm praying the night before, God, show your face to me. I need answers. Like, we have to fix this. And I remember he's doing the teaching. They did a break in between that part and going on the mountain and the water, and they played the song, Let It Rain, Open the Floodgates of Heaven. And I tell you, like, I stood there, and it was like there's just this yellow aura, no heat, and like this power going through my body, up and down bigger than any shot of heroin I ever had. And like in that moment, I knew I stood in the presence of God. I knew it. I was baptized shortly after that. But here's the thing with that, right? Like, I have so much self-will that I think I know better than God. And what happened? I blew things up 3 weeks after. I had this experience where I felt like I stood in the presence of God, but I blew my life up worse than I ever did. It just shows you, like, in my sinful nature, like, that I think that I can have some kind of outcome. And, through that pain, again, but all I could hear was, like, Proverbs 3:21 would just come into my head. It says, "My son, do not reject the Lord's discipline. Don't be upset when he corrects you, for the Lord corrects those he loves, just as a father corrects a child in whom he delights." So even through that storm in the darkest points of my life, I found some peace. And it went on for a while. I was relapsing like every 6 months, and then finally, I got honest with people. I was telling people I was sober. I wasn't. My prayers were like, "God, fix this situation. I'll do anything you want, but tell the truth." Like, that was kind of how it went. But I got honest, and I started working my steps. And through this time, I had that experience. My faith was growing. Even though I was messing up, I was being called closer and closer. I was doing discipleship groups, and then once I kind of just surrendered and got honest and worked the steps, things started working out. And, I was just doing everything things were starting to move in the right way. And, I didn't have anybody. I don't have it. I have a lot of you guys, but I don't have any family here. So I went through a lot of these. All I had was prayer. That's all I had, every morning, every night. It's the only thing I had, but it's the only thing I needed. And so I was still fighting that custody battle and everything, but what happened? I got peace. Through the biggest storm of my life, I found peace. The situation didn't change. God had changed my heart. And that's kind of been my journey. It was, I used to, when I was in discipleship group, and I would read these, the fruits of the Spirit, and I would hear long suffering, and I'd kind of cringe, that one hurts. But looking back on it now, it's probably the best fruit of the Spirit. The amount of growth that has happened in my life through that pain and the relationship I developed with Jesus has completely changed who I am. It's the cornerstone of my life. It's the foundation. I may step away from AA or anything, but my foundation is in Jesus Christ and the church. That is my foundation. That's maybe why I can step away, because life is busy, but not that I turn my back on those things, but this is where my home is. This is where I've always found my heart. So the biggest step for me during that time was step 3. It's crazy because as I'm working these steps and having these experiences, and my sponsor telling me, "Why don't you just surrender already?" And I'm on my knees, and I'm like, I'm trying to surrender every morning, every night. I'm playing Hillsong United. I surrender. I'm trying to surrender. Take this from me. I don't want to be there anymore. And the moment it happened, after a year of custody, their lawyer filed a thing saying that I'm not the father, so I had to do a DNA test. And mind you, I had my plan. If this child's not mine, I am going somewhere else. But he was my son. That moment, everything just, I don't know. I didn't need anything else. I knew he was my son. Everything was going to work out. And that was just, and the only thing that got me through was prayer. And I remember, you seen the little heart up there? It said, "Wait." There's a husband and a wife who goes to my church, and she always does these hearts. and she prays over him. The day before, I'm like running down Cape Coral Park, like, God, I need an answer. Like, you have to give me an answer on what's going on, or I'm done. I'm out. So I go to lunch with them, and she gives me that heart, and it says, wait. And I remember, like, thinking to myself, like, you've given me an answer. It's not the one I want. You know? And someone told me, like, the three answers you'll get from God is yes, no, and wait. And that's what happened. So what's it like now? Like, I love AA, I love everything that, but my favorite thing is talking about Jesus. Like, when I'm around believers and we're talking about what Jesus has done in my life and in their life and on spiritual matters and how that is the solution to our problems is one of the biggest blessings of my life. It's what I love to do the most. And, you know, that's, if for newcomers, like, just pray. Like, lay it all at the altar. Just pray. You know, I never thought my prayers would be answered. I wasn't looking for him. I was praying, but he found me. So, you know, and one thing that I learned along the way doing discipleship groups, I thought that I wasn't being a good enough Christian. I wasn't following tenets. And then I had this moment where I'm like, there's only been one person in human history who has lived up to this. Like, we strive to live like him, but I just, because I was getting really down on myself about that. And, you know, it's one of the things that I do. I like to talk to people about God. And a verse that always comes in my head, and it's called the Shema. It's Deuteronomy 6:4-9. It says, Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, and God is one. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. You must commit yourself wholeheartedly to these commands that I am giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home, when you're on the road, when you're going to bed, and when you're getting up. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as a reminder. And write them on the doorpost of your house and your gates. I actually have a little mezuzah on my doorpost that has that prayer, just like they do in Judaism. I try to do that. I teach my son these things. I pray with my son. He prays for his teachers. Like, regardless what I do in my life, like, I bought a bag of those little baby Jesuses, and when I opened the Amazon bag, my son was like, that's Jesus. I don't care what I do in this life, as long as I get that right. So I try to live that out. I teach it to my son. I talk about it to people. Anytime I meet people out and we start having these conversations, every Sunday he asks me, we going to church? I told him we were going to church. He's like, which church are we going to? Are we going to my church? We go to like 3 different churches. So he's like, so yeah, that's kind of my journey so far. And thank you. My name is Xavier, and through Jesus Christ, I have victory over drugs and alcohol.